Morning. Thank you all for being here. We are here in the case of the United States of America versus the City of Ferguson, case number 416CV180. We are here for a quarterly status hearing. This is a hearing where we're going to have hear from the members of the public who have signed up to speak, and I just realized I ask you all sometimes every time how to pronounce your names, and then I forget. I have a little cheat sheet, but I didn't bring it with me, so I'm going to apologize in advance for mispronouncing people's names. But let me start with the lawyers. Would counsel for the United States please identify yourself for the record?
Good morning, Your Honor. Jeffrey Murray for the United States.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murray. And would counsel for the city please identify yourself for the record? And would the monitor or anyone else here on the monitoring team please identify yourself for the record?
Good morning, Judge Perry. Natasha, it's pronounced Natasha Tidwell, on behalf of the monitoring team.
Thank you. All right. So we do have members of the public who have signed up to speak, and I think you all know the routine. Most of the people, maybe not everybody who have spoken are have done it before or have been at these hearings before, but you have 5 minutes to speak, and we want to hear what everybody has to say. So you can just stand up to the step up to the lectern and say your name, and the yellow light will come on when you have a minute left, and then the red light will come up on. So after 4 minutes, the yellow light will come on, and then after the red light will come on after 5 minutes. And so the person whose name I can't remember how to pronounce is Mr. Bothod. You're going to have to tell me again because I asked you before. And Buteau, I knew it was something I was not going to say correct. I'll write another phonetic cheat sheet, and then I'll try to remember it next time. Yes, Mr. Buteau, so I would like to hear anything you wish to say.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Ferguson, everything is connected. Ferguson is now in federal court because Ferguson systematically denied citizens of their rights based on their race. The court found this to be true. The city consented that it was true and agreed on a plan to end the pattern and to correct and reverse it. Almost immediately, the city slow-walked implementation of solutions. Well, years have passed. The city finally got serious about its obligation. This can happen. Just as that corner turned, the loudest voices on our city council are trying to renege on the court-imposed and city-agreed-to reforms. They claim the work is complete. They claim the city cannot afford to fulfill our responsibility. The city doesn't have the money to live up to our obligation. Outside this court, the city claims we have plenty of money to abate the taxes of our largest parcel of land for 10 years and possibly longer. This land, this loud voice cannot hear themselves. They cheer for a development that will overtax the citizens for the benefit of outsiders. Why? Let's go back to the beginning of the story. The racial motivation that led to over-policing, over-enforcing, over-penalizing our black neighbors is back in play in over-polluting, overtaxing, and overloading the public services in a mostly black neighborhood. This isn't two stories. This is one story, a story of continuing shame. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And then the second name, I actually can't read the last name. The first name is Henry, and I apologize, sir. You'll have to tell me your last name.
Good morning, Your Honor. Henry Iwanofu.
How do you spell your last name?
Iwenofu. No, I've been here for 50 years, but still can. People ask me how to pronounce it. I normally tell them I win for you.
That's actually, that would help me spell it at least, I think. So thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have much to say this morning other than to thank the judicial branch for making sure that our system of government is functioning. It is unconscionable for someone to have a contract and then because of a political change, they decide that they can use budgetary constraints to change the contract that they have. I really want to thank this court and thank you for holding their foot down. It is imperative that this court make sure that they don't hide behind financial constraints. The previous speaker just talked about what was going on in our community. We all live in Ferguson. We want Ferguson to move forward, and it cannot move forward if you deny a certain group of the part of the community the opportunity to have a fulfilled life, to live like every American citizen. The founding fathers, although they were slave owners, looked at the Magna Carta for freedom. They wanted freedom for themselves. And that's what we're working on, the three tripartite system of government, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative. These days, we only have one government, except for the judiciary, that is trying to stop people from doing the things that they think that they can get away with. So I'm asking that the court continue, as long as you can hold the case, continue to put your foot down and make sure that they comply to the agreement that they made with the citizens of Ferguson. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Cassandra Butler.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I wish I had better observations to report, but Ferguson is an institution that has basic tendencies which have gotten us into your courtroom in the first place, and those basic tendencies remain. We don't really want to be accountable. We still resent that we even got caught. We want to halfway do the work. Our tendency is to look like we are compliant, and at best to be only technically compliant. The spirit of the law as a foreign concept is chewed by many council members. Remember way back when, at the beginning of the consent decree, when the city did national searches for a city manager? Those searches resulted in the hiring of DeCarlin Seward and Eric Osterberg. When Osterberg resigned, the council decided to select the next city manager in private. And among a number of qualified candidates, determined it was best to select an internal candidate, even though he would remain as fire chief too. And we are transitioning again with the move that was set up 2 years ago with the appointment of an assistant city manager. No one else was even considered for becoming the next city manager. Let me be clear. I am not opposing the selection, but I am opposing the process. I believe it is a protective process to control the type of decisions that are made by the city manager. With an open hiring process, who knows what the most qualified person may think and do? Controlling processes in order to limit and control outcomes seems to be how this iteration of the council, and by their closed-door selection process, their employee, the city manager, is operating. This impacts their implementation of the consent decree in many ways. Today, I want to highlight just one of them. Just at the last council meeting, the mayor made a claim that the MPSC is an entity of the city and thereby owned by the city. The implication was that, therefore, the MPSC activities need to fall within parameters that would be approved by the council city manager. The trigger for this claim appears to be the use of MPSC logo on a community canvassing event in which a member passed out flyers promoting MPSC to the community. Because a mayoral candidate was also involved in the community canvassing event, a candidate was involved, it was seen that designating the MPSC as a city entity allowed the inference that the logo also belonged to the city and thereby was improperly used without the city's permission. Members of the MPSC reject this claim outright. We believe this claim was manufactured because in order to make the MPSC more compliant to the city's tendency, the easiest way to do this at this point is to create ordinances whereby the council appoints members to the committee, the MPSC committee. I believe that pointing to the consent decree after 10 years to change the nature of the input and advice they get from the MPSC about how the community wants to be policed is more evidence of who we are led by at the municipal governing level. This control is similar to how the council felt empowered to try to end the consent decree by cutting its budget rather than putting more money to purchase more manpower to complete the work sooner. Your Honor, I've asked at the last two council meetings the same question you asked at the last status hearing. Did the council restore the second half of the budget that they so publicly cut? Crickets. I still don't know. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Nikita Noah.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Judge Perry. I am Nikita Noah, serving and representing Ward 3 Ferguson. This morning, I would like to offer a thank you to all of the current and past elected officials and staff whom have worked towards compliance and completion of the Ferguson consent decree. I want all of them to know that their efforts, attention to detail, and work ethic hasn't gone unnoticed. Mayor Ella Jones, Fire Chief and City Manager John Hampton, FPD Chief Troy Doyle, Patricia Washington, Lisa Stevens, and any other FPD and Ferguson admin staff not mentioned. Thank you all. We have accomplished so much together. While we still have work to do and change is occurring in our city government, I ask any incoming and current elected officials and staff to stay the course. Let's not forget our why. Let's approach every area of Ferguson administration reform with a work ethic that promotes and represents the city of Ferguson in a manner that proves that we are one Ferguson, moving forward together, working towards positive progression and representation for all of our residents. Judge Perry, as you like to say, let's keep the momentum going. Thank you for the time to speak.
Mayor Ella Jones.
Good morning, Judge Perry. Thank you for the opportunity to speak my thoughts concerning the consent decree that Ferguson has been working toward compliance for the last 10 years. I have never missed a status hearing since I've been on council. I am a 50-year resident of the city of Ferguson. I have shared several statements before, therefore, I will be brief as possible. Ferguson is working to achieve compliance of the consent decree in the next year and move to the monitor stage of the consent decree. John Hampton, city manager, and I worked together to hire Troy Doyle as the chief of police and work with him to sign his new contract for 2026 through 2030. The hiring and renewal of Chief Doyle's contract has created a sense of urgency and accountability to move the police department toward compliance with the consent decree. I just want to say thank you to Natasha Tidwell for taking that telephone call and moving from one group to another so this consent decree continued to move forward. When Troy arrived, the department staffing levels were at a concerning 49%. Through concerted recruiting efforts and improved retention strategies, we have successfully increased our staffing to 85%. Since John Hampton has gone over and beyond working as a fire chief and city manager, we have had record numbers of infrastructure improve, especially with the work Corey Gilbert and the Public Works team have completed, with several streets repaired, much more. The hiring of Nathan as the Economic Development Director, Terry as the Director of Code, and David Musgrave has turned around the park department to assistant city manager and now city manager. There's no need for us to pay $50,000 for a search when we can hire within. I just like to say, Dave continued to work with me with the Community Project Fund, and we received the $1 million from Congressman Bell to improve Plaza at 501. And to all the donors who invested in the Halpin Unity Park in Ward 3 with Councilwoman Phaedra Nelson leading the way with $150,000 in donation. I cannot say enough about Jonathan, Lavetta, Nadrick. They are par excellent as our management team. John is more than ready to return to the fire department, and I am more than ready to start another chapter in my political career as the St. Louis County Councilwoman of District 1. I didn't stay in the role of mayor for 6 years and on the council for 5 years, for a total of 11 years, to seek approval of many as to what they wanted me to do. My goal was to support the staff, to move Ferguson forward out of the crises and develop intergovernmental relationship for the sustainability of our community, which I am most proud of. No, the council is not perfect, but we found common ground several times for positive outcomes for our community. I am hopeful that the council will fund the consent decree. As far as the NPSC, it is an advisory board and not a political group. The same for the personnel board. We have rules and regulations. No board has the right to meet without staff and without a council representation. As I come to the close, Abraham Lincoln gave this address June 16, 1858, at what was then the Illinois state capitol in Springfield, after he accepted the Illinois Republican Party's nomination as the state's U.S. Senator. Abraham Lincoln's address simply stated that a group must be united and not fight one another if it wishes to survive. Also, a house divided by itself cannot stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Charlanda Garrett.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
I am a 30-year resident of Ferguson, Missouri. When I moved there, I felt that I was comfortable that I could stay there as long as I wanted to stay there. The rules and regulations of the consent decree I'm happy that it's in place to be able to voice concerns of different things that are going on that is not being addressed. What I want to say is that I would like to see the overall city government, starting from the mayor, whoever is the new mayor, the chief of police, and the police, treat the citizens with respect. Not disrespect residents to make them feel as if they're no longer wanted in Ferguson and they have to be told nasty things to digest. It's not acceptable. So what I want to see is that speak to people how you want people to speak to you and treat you. Other than that, I see how the police are interacting with the community. When there is strange things going on, they will come and address them. They have been communicating through St. Louis County Dispatch since February of 2024. I like that system better because you get a chance to communicate, to share with the dispatchers to go over to what needs to be addressed. What's not happening is when the officers get to the residents, it's an attitude. It's not being impartial on what's going on. So I would like to see that be a better solution to handling residents in a peaceful manner. Now go back to 2014 and you hear people say, oh, you live in Ferguson? It's a black mark. I don't want people to be cross over in Hawaii to say, I would like for you to come to me. Oh, but I heard about that incident. So I would like to see better and positivity overall from the city government, no matter who's in the office. Thank you.
Thank you. And then last we have Ms. Klein, Mildred Kleins.
Mildred Kleins, 7444 Castro Drive in Ferguson, Missouri. Good morning, Judge Perry, representatives from the city, the DOJ, our head monitor, Ms. Tidwell, and members from the community. Judge Perry, thank you again for this opportunity to speak on record during this hearing. During my 38 years as a resident, I've been an active member of my community. I've done my part trying to help this city be its best by volunteering on boards and commissions, engaging with my neighbors in a positive way, and attending and participating in community activities. I was a big part of the protest community here in Ferguson after the killing of Michael Brown. I am a part of several community groups. Grade A for Change, which is working to bring diversity and inclusion to the Ferguson Florissant School Board. The Ferguson Collaborative, working for civil and constitutional rights for citizens here in Ferguson as it relates to the police department and the court system. I was a member of the CRB task force, which set up the framework for the current CRB. When the DOJ and the city agreed to establish the MPSC, I was and still is one of its original members. Other original members are here today as well. Many members have come and gone, but we're still here, still doing the work, still trying to be the change that many in our community want to see. From day one, the MPSC has supported and participated in community outreach and engagement, helped with police recruitment, hiring, promotions, and participated in evaluating police training programs. We've tried to advise on revising the municipal codes and working with the youth. Many members of the MPSC attend most, if not all, city council meetings. Although we are a fraction in size of the original group that was 11 years ago, we're more active than ever before. The committee is open to residents and those living in surrounding cities that desire to build relationships with law enforcement. Very early on, the MPSC decided to make decisions by way of consensus. It takes longer, but it works for this group. Because we're the marginalized, disenfranchised, and the voiceless section of the city, it was important that every person be included and every voice be heard. It has worked up to this point extremely well. We've operated without any financial support from the city. That's okay, because we're independent. We're in the community listening to the public about their issues with law enforcement and soliciting their input on how to improve relationships, talking to business owners and neighbors. The MPSC worked for nearly 9 months on municipal codes revision concerning conflict of interest. We gave a presentation to the city council, and they declined to consider our recommendations. They even declined to even have a discussion on our recommendations. That was so disappointing to many of us, given all the work that was put in. We're looked upon as a whole people accountable group. Some are not very favorable about that. This is a citizen-led group, and citizen involvement is so crucial in its success. Whether the city respects the MPSC or not, we're determined and committed to steering the city, the police department, the courts, and the community in the direction where relationships are better, constitutional rights are protected, the courts are no longer using us as ATMs, and where the city listens and hears even the least of us. Doing community outreach activities, we are the MPSC of Ferguson, Missouri, Neighborhood Policing Committee. Your community, your police. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kleins. I appreciate all of the citizens who have spoken. It's very helpful for me and has been throughout this process to hear from you each time and every other time, and I really appreciate it. I'm gonna start by calling on Mr. Carey, and I, as usual, have you introduce the people you wish to introduce, and then tell me what else I need to know.
Thank you, Judge Perry. It's a pleasure to be here, as you know. I do always start off by introducing the folks who are here, and we got a really big group this time, so bear with me a little bit. I had to, just before we started here, and there was a new face that I didn't even recognize myself, so I had to make sure that I knew everybody's name. So you've already heard from our Mayor, Ella Jones, and Councilwoman Naquita Noah, but you did not hear from another one of our councilwomen in the audience. Her name is Lamika Covington, and she's sitting right next to John Hampton. We also have, obviously, our current city manager, John Hampton, our assistant city manager, Dave Musgrave, who in a day will be transitioning to be our city manager. I don't know that if we spoke about this on our monthly calls, but obviously when John Hampton was hired, it was an interim thing because he was still the police chief, and he's done a lot of work to sort of stabilize the city in the past couple years. Obviously, he hired Chief Doyle, and he's just sort of helped the city get to a point to where we feel like we're stable enough. And he just, desires to go back to his original position as fire chief. And Dave Musgrave, who you know has been sitting in on a lot of our calls and been sort of involved in consent decree compliance for the last year or so, will be taking over for him on April 1st. So that is a change that you heard the citizens talk about that I don't know that I had been detailed about that on our calls or not, but I just wanted to do that here in the public.
Thank you. Chief Hampton, I thank you for what you've done the last few years, and glad you get to go back to working one job. And Manager Musgrave, I know since you have been on some of the calls and I've seen you before, I'm looking forward to working with you all more.
Okay, and then behind that row, we have Jonathan McMillan, who is our HR manager. Then we also have Michelle Richmond, who you know is our court administrator. We have Lavetta London, who is our acting city clerk right now. We have Carmen Black, who that was the name or the face I didn't realize, but she is Chief Doyle's new assistant. And then behind her, you'll see Chief Doyle. You'll also see Harry Dilworth, who is a stalwart here in the city of Ferguson with consent decree compliance. You'll see Lisa Stevens as well.
She's back there hiding. I see now.
That's right. And then obviously, last but of course not least, our consent decree coordinator obviously is here because she's going to give the detailed report about where we are. So big crowd today. Judge Perry, again, just sort of reinforcing the city's commitment to seeing the consent decree through. I want to make a few general comments about some of the things that you heard from the citizens, because I don't know, some of the stuff, that you may hear, we don't necessarily talk about in our consent decree meetings, but from the first gentleman who spoke, I think one of the things you heard was they were sort of talking about redevelopment and that kind of thing, but that was just a reference to the Emerson campus, which is there's a proposed redevelopment for the Emerson campus going on right now, and it involves the potential for a data center. And so we had a public hearing about that, or actually a public meeting about that last week or the week before last, I can't remember. And it just, the citizens feel, there's a lot of talk about whether or not that's the best thing for the community. So that was the reference that you heard.
I did read about that in the paper.
Yes.
That was in the local news. So
yes. Okay.
I was aware of the issue with that campus.
All right, perfect. I just wanted to make sure
at least some of the issues. I'm sure not to the level of details all the people here know, but
that's right. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. That was the reference. And then also there was a reference to the issue of the budget and the cutting of the budget. We have yet to experience ramifications from that as it relates to what the city's available funds are for paying the invoices and the paying the bills of the folks who we have working on the consent decree, whether that be the monitor or some experts that have been helping the city out. We have yet to experience any impact of that.
In other words, they're getting paid.
Yes. So, I just want to say to the court that we have not had any issues with whether or not people are getting paid and continuing to work on the consent decree. The last thing sort of was referenced was that there, is not such it's not a well-kept secret that there are discussions between the United States of America and the city of Ferguson about making modifications to the consent decree. And really, I think those modifications are thought about in two ways. One is, the policing is just a bit different than it was in 2016. The city of Ferguson's police department is different than it was in 2016. There's some things in the consent decree that were written into the consent decree based on how the police department was how it existed at that time, that are now obsolete. For example, the jail situation. We don't house our own prisoners in the city of Ferguson. We have several sections in the consent decree about that. Dispatch is now gone. You heard a reference to dispatch being done by St. Louis County. There's some language in the consent decree about that. Our SRO officer program, we no longer have that. There's language in the consent decree about that. So there are things in the consent decree that no longer exist as they did in 2014, 2015, 2016. And so there's an idea of sort of streamlining some of those things out of the consent decree to make sure that, we have a more manageable document so that we can sort of focus the city's resources on the sort of the meat and potatoes of the consent decree, which is, use of force, accountability, transparency, all the things that were found to be issues in the Department of Justice's report. And then sort of the second theme we'd like to sort of accomplish is to be able to showcase some of the wins that we actually have had as a city under the consent decree. I know that, obviously we have a new administration in terms of the President of the United States and the different policies. But one of the sort of the changes that have occurred now is that, we used to sit here in front of you. It was just me sitting there. There were like 4 or 5 lawyers over there. And, all of them had the city and the same people running in 4 or 5 different directions all at the same time. And it made it really, really difficult to make progress because, while we're appeasing one person, then you got another person, from the Department of Justice telling you, well, the city of Ferguson hasn't done this and they haven't done that. And there were times when that was absolutely the city's fault, right? Like we just didn't have the staff in place, or we hired the wrong person, or we were just dragging our feet on things that we, probably needed to be more expedient about. However, we're at a point now where we can sort of focus our resources and really sort of showcase what we actually have done. And I think the modifications to the consent decree that we have been discussing with the Department of Justice are also designed to be able to show the public that we do have some wins, that we actually have done some things. Our culture is actually different. Policing is done differently. We've got great leadership. We've got great command staff, people who are embedded in the police department, who the community loves. Pat Washington, Lisa Stevens, they aren't going anywhere. They're here, right? So, the consent decree at some point was going to wind down. I think that was the thought process when it was, obviously it's taken, twice as long as the initial thought process. It was going to wind down, and I know sometimes change feels different. But at the same time, I think these modifications that we're talking about with the Department of Justice are really going to be able to highlight for the citizens what we have done and make them proud that they have a police department whose culture has changed and that we are engaging in constitutional policing, and that some of the things that were happening in pre-consent decree are just not happening anymore. So I won't say any more about that. I'll allow the Department of Justice to I don't want to steal Mr. Murray's thunder about anything he wants to say about that. So unless you have any questions for me, Judge, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Washington so she can sort of give you a bit more of a detailed report of where we are.
That would be great. I'd look forward to hearing Ms. Washington's report.
You got it.
Step on up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge Perry. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to apologize right off the bat. I'm a little bit under the weather today. There seems to be a man in West County who wants to take my tonsils out, and I'm trying to avoid that, but I'm not winning.
Well,
so I'm just trying to get through the day.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for being here.
There are a couple of things that I do want to talk about in my formal remarks, but I wanted to address right at the beginning some of the comments that were made by Mr. Carey, and that you will hear a little bit later, possibly from the Department of Justice, and that is about the modifications to the consent decree. I think it's extremely important that people understand that while we are having these conversations, these are not conversations that are designed to run rampant through the consent decree simply because there is no longer a desire to conform to the consent decree. The conversations are about how do we prove that there is compliance in those significant areas that make up the bulk of the consent decree. And those areas where we can demonstrate compliance, meaning that we have done the work and it is in evidence that we have done the work, and that perhaps those areas can now come out of federal oversight. And yes, there are areas that are somewhat obsolete, as Mr. Carey said, because the relevance of those particular sections of the consent decree is not there, simply because we've evolved on to different modes of getting those things done, or in the case of the SRO, the school district has the final say in that regard. So I don't want to leave the impression from any of those conversations or that dialogue that there is a desire to just close the chapter, just close the book and say we're done. Those conversations have been very thoughtful, very deliberate, and so I'm looking forward to some continued dialogue on how we can make sure that we have a consent decree that continues to uphold the spirit of the reason that we were in the consent decree in the first place, and ensure that we can go forward with constitutional protected activity.
Yes, and that's what I've been hearing and focusing on as well. I would agree with your assessment of it, and I appreciate it from everyone. Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead.
So I wanted to start out by thanking Mayor Ella Jones for her steadfast support and for her commitment to the consent decree and the work from the very beginning, and continues up to this day, as evidenced by what she said earlier, never having even missed a consent decree hearing, and often serving, at least for me, as someone who can always add perspective and institutional recall as we are considering some of the work that must continue to be done. So I appreciate her and I respect her and I thank her for all of that.
And I thank you too, Mayor Jones. It's been greatly appreciated. Let me mention, if you want to sit, you don't have to stand at the lectern. If it would be easier for you to sit down, given that you're a little under the weather, as long as you turn that microphone around and talk into it, you'll be, you can sit. Why don't you have a seat in the chair and do that? And I will be able to hear you, and
okay,
that'll work fine.
Thank you. Okay, we good?
Yeah. So you just make sure that microphone's sort of pointing at your mouth.
All right.
Thanks.
I also want to thank Chief Hampton, who, as you heard earlier, is returning to his original role as fire chief. He, too, has been someone that I have relied on when I've needed advice. I can't think of a time that I have called upon him to ask him about something or make a request. We haven't always agreed, but he's always been open, and he's always been someone that I felt that I could have an open and honest dialogue with, even when we are disagreeing. So I was happy to hear that he is going to remain engaged in the oversight and some of the management of the consent decree process as Dave Musgrave, our new city manager, steps in and gets acclimated to his new role. So just thank you to both of you. I really greatly appreciate that. I want to move now, Judge, into some of the updates, some of the quarterly updates, and we'll start with the police department staffing. We have 43 total sworn officers. The current leadership includes 2 lieutenants, 3 captains, and 5 sergeants. I always feel like I'm leaving somebody else out, but I think I got it right. We also have 8 candidates who are in the hiring process. 6 of those, at least 6 of those, are experienced officers who are coming from other jurisdictions. And we have a continued focus on hiring more experienced officers. A little bit later on in my report, I'm going to share some of the challenges that we face, and it does involve staffing. But when I talk about those things, I want to be clear that if the city manager or the city manager to be tomorrow, printed up a bunch of money in the basement this evening and gave it to us, we would not be able to hire. Law enforcement across the country is experiencing a decline. People are not applying to be police officers. There's a sharp decline in that area. So even if we did everything right, we would still have some difficulty in hiring, as you can see by other departments across the region. So even though we do have our challenges, and I'll talk about some of those, it is not because there is a lack of effort. I want to talk a little bit now about police department training. The annual training calendar has been reviewed and approved by the training committee, and I truly thank them for their work and their support in helping us move that along. The annual training plan evaluations from the training committee were received by Ms. Stevens, and the feedback, which was actually very constructive, was incorporated into the annual plan. As you know, the consent decree requires us to have a review of the training plan each year, and we've set a cadence for when we're going to have that annual review. And during that time, we take a look at training to see what works, what needs to be improved. We look at things that can be delivered in person. We look at things that can be delivered virtually, and just trying to make sure that as we are delivering training under some very strong constraints in terms of staffing and being able to the timing to pull people in, it's very critical that we have a training plan that actually fits the work that we have to do, but in the manner in which we need to do it, given some of the staffing issues. We do have some upcoming training. Those include bias-free policing and First Amendment refreshers. We have just completed some new firearms training. We're doing stop, search, and arrest training. Our new taser training and body-worn and in-car camera training is ongoing. We have supervisory use of force and investigation. The second module for that is being delivered by Captain Harry Dilworth. Our officers are also scheduled this quarter for our CIT training, and we also have some training coming up for our supervisors on early intervention training and then accountability within the police department. So again, another full training calendar this quarter and moving into next quarter. We have contracts that were just approved by the City Council for curriculum development, and it's a refresher training in the stop, search, and arrest and bias-free policing and the First Amendment training that I just mentioned. And I think it's important, Judge Perry, to mention here that we are at a point in our training where we are starting to deliver refreshers and not just first round training. So I think that's important, and that signals a great deal of work and progress that has been made in the training area. The fact that we can now move to second level refreshers for our existing officers and then continue with the full training for new officers signifies that we are where we need to be regarding our training plan. And I also wanted to highlight that we have new recruit training. There are some modifications that we will be having for our experienced officers. I just mentioned that we'll have several. Hopefully they will all make it through the process and agree to join the department. But because these officers are veteran officers, they do not have to, I wouldn't say have to. We felt that it was better a use of time and a respect for their existing skills to take them through a modified new officer training. So Ms. Stevens and Lieutenant Mink have worked, and Captain Dilworth have worked very diligently to modify their onboarding so that they can be hired, get through their training, and then put their skills to work in patrol as quickly as possible. We also have training that is coming up for our PTO program. We have, as you know, have struggled in the PTO program for quite a while. The training committee worked very hard to put the curriculum together. But then we ran into a roadblock because we really don't have enough staff and experienced officers that we can designate for PTOs. As you know, the PTO is that is the lifeblood of the department. And those PTO officers, they are accountable for the training and conduct of those new officers well after their training period and for years to come. So you really want to make sure that you have the person who has the right temperament and who has the right training and the willingness to be a PTO. So we've identified several candidates. We've also opened up the PTO trainer position for department-wide, and so we're looking forward to see what officers will reply to that invitation. I also wanted to share under the training module that under the training report that we have new software systems that we are implementing, and it helps us with the training because we can now record trainings that are taking place. We can create virtual training sessions and create an actual training library that our officers can access at any time. So this is, I think, an extremely important progress in terms of how we are looking at training and making sure that we can deliver it in a cost-effective, efficient way, because training is expensive. It is an expensive investment, but with all of the modern technology that is available to us, we must be able to capture that and harness that to make sure that we're providing and delivering training in a more modern and effective and efficient manner. The next, and the other thing I wanted to brag about, because it ties right into my next segment, is 100% of our police department is now trained in the SARA model, problem solving for community-oriented policing. That means our sworn staff, all the officers, and all the command staff have all been trained as well. So that's a major milestone for us. That ties next to the section is community policing, and as it relates to the community policing segment of the consent decree, I'm happy to say that we have completed 4, 5, I think, briefing sessions with all of our officers, our new officers, and the officers who've been with the police department for quite some time to do a refresher on both the community policing plan and the crime prevention plan. All of those sessions have been very well received by our officers, and I appreciate them for the accommodation of those 4 or 5 sessions. We still have one more session that we want to do, and it for those officers who were either ill or on vacation or in additional training that we need to get done. The reason why that is important is because that community policing plan and that crime prevention plan really are the heart of our community policing initiative. And so we wanted to make sure that even though the officers knew, they inherently know and embrace community policing, but it was important for me to make sure they understood how all of this tied together, how all of it works, not just for the consent decree, but because community policing is the bedrock of what we're doing at the Ferguson Police Department. So it's one thing to kind of be in it and of it, but it's another total to understand how it all connects and how it all works together, and that it really is a strategic endeavor and not just something that you might haphazardly do or inconsistently do. So I was very pleased we were able to get that done. We have completed the community policing audit. I'm sure the monitor will talk a little bit more about that and provide an update on that. And I'm looking forward to getting the feedback from that audit process. And in the Chiefs Community Engagement Committee, this was a new committee that I put together and pulled together representatives from the community. We have nonprofit leaders, juvenile justice professionals, we have members of the St. Louis County Family Court, and a number of youth services organizations. And all of these people meet once a month at the police department, and we talk about how we can provide resources for our young people, what can we do to do some intervention with our young people, particularly as school's out and the summer months are coming up. So right now we are planning a teen resource event. This will be the second event that we've hosted. It will have a job fair connected to it, and it will also have support for those people who are interested in learning new technology and some of the humanities and arts programming that will be part of that. From that event, we will hope to identify some additional young people to serve on the Youth Advisory Board for the Police Department. And then finally, in the community policing notes, I do want to note and thank Captain Dilworth for moving forward the Force Review Board. We had not had the Force Review Board active, and so within the last 6 months or so, we've been able to identify the candidates. They've started to meet. They are reviewing cases, and we are scheduling a joint session with the CRB to fine-tune and review how these two important civilian review entities support FPD. As it relates to the Ferguson Municipal Courts, I was aware that the NPSC has done a couple of different monitoring visits to the courts, and they have had some interviews with those who have been appearing before the court. Those reviews from those people have generally been positive, indicating that they believe that they have received fair treatment. They may not have liked the outcome, but at least the process was fair. I also took the opportunity to observe 2 court sessions, and I want to report to you that the tone and the demeanor of our judges was respectful and very helpful. I spoke to one individual. A smile comes to my face because he was quite animated. I can't use some of the words that he shared, but to paraphrase, he just said, "This ain't the old Ferguson," and he was extremely enthusiastic about the outcome of his experience there at court. And so I was pleased to report that to you today. I also, when I come here and I do these updates, I talk about the court administrator, Michelle Richmond. And I cannot say enough about the work that she continues to do in managing our courts. She has been phenomenal. She continues to be phenomenal. In talking with her, or just recently, she shared that some of the final items the court needed to complete before some of the members of the DOJ departed included the self-assessment chart, updates to the website to ensure that information was easily accessible for defendants, and implementing measures to ensure compliance with the caps on city revenue. All of those things have now been completed. The website has been updated. They continue to engage in the court self-assessment, and that is designed to ensure that the municipal court proceedings are administered fairly and are in full compliance with policy as well as federal and state law. Additionally, Show Me Courts has developed an aggregate court data report, and that includes a breakdown by protected characteristics for all assessments in accordance with paragraph 360 of the consent decree. And this May, the entire court staff will participate in their annual implicit bias training at the 2026 spring conference, and that training will be presented by a municipal court judge from Missouri. So they continue with their self-improvement, with their self-assessment, and ensuring that not only that they are complying with the consent decree, but that the court is operating effectively and efficiently. So now, if I may, talk about some of the challenges. It's one thing to come and to share all the wonderful things that we are doing, and I appreciate the support and the work of everybody, because there have been so many people who work tirelessly, and they don't have to do that. They are giving up their time and the time away from family to support and serve on these various committees and to do this work, and I appreciate that. So earlier I talked about staffing, and that continues to be the biggest challenge in the police department and impacts everything from promotions to training to administrative operations. Too often our commanders must forego their regular duties to support shortages on patrol due to vacations, illness, injury, absences. Things happen. We often cannot consistently schedule our officers for neighborhood meetings. We do our best. We try to make sure that our officers are there, that they are present, but they may get called out on a call while they're at a neighborhood meeting. So we don't have a dedicated neighborhood officer. And that would be something that I know that we've had in the past and would like to get back to that. But while the staffing and the ability to participate in neighborhood meetings and the ability or the inability to have some of those special patrol units that we desperately need, whether they're concentrating on those areas where we are experiencing some increase, whether it's violent crime or gun crimes or domestic violence, those require not just one time, answer the call, go to the next call. They deserve and require some special attention, and that takes staffing. So I know that we are working diligently on that issue. And again, as I said, it's not just an issue of money. Law enforcement across the board is experiencing challenges with recruitment, and we are no different. What I can say is that the people who do end up joining our department are committed to being there, and they want to be there because they know that they can put their skills to use and make a difference where it matters. The other area that I want to address in terms of a challenge or something that we need to make sure that we're paying great attention to is organizational transformation, and that is required to sustain our progress, which is real progress, but sustaining it requires transformation, not simply transformation that adds more duties or checks off additional boxes and requirement. It's about fully embracing the process and taking ownership of our individual roles in it. Every member of this department, every member of city government plays a part in ensuring that what we have built does not just meet expectations or does not just get a compliance finding, but that it lasts and it results in true systems change. At the center of that transformation is something that we often overlook, and that is communication as an asset. Communication is not just a function, it's a force multiplier. It improves efficiency, it reduces duplication of effort, it strengthens accountability, and it ensures consistency in how we operate and how we serve. In a department like ours, and in a city government that also is not fully staffed, there are many people who are already doing the work of 2, sometimes 3 people. We need clear, intentional communication. It's not optional, it's essential. When we are working in a resource-constrained environment, we're a small team with significant responsibilities. It means that transformation must also include developing skills that improve efficiency. It's not acceptable to say this is how we've always done it, and this is what I'm used to. We have to be able to share knowledge across roles, and we have to identify ways to work smarter, not just harder. Organizational transformation requires a commitment, not just something that's on a piece of paper. And so I want to give you an example of transformation in action. I want to recognize Lieutenant Todd Mink and Training Coordinator Lisa Stevens for demonstrating exactly what organizational transformation in action looks like. Together, they tackled one of our more complex challenges, which is training, scheduling training, and they turned it into an opportunity for collaboration and growth. Ms. Stevens took the initiative to learn more about the scheduling system that Lieutenant Mink was using, And she didn't just learn it, she really took the time to try and master it. As a result, she is now able to take on key scheduling responsibilities, freeing Lieutenant Mink to focus on critical patrol operations. And that's what transformation looks like. And that's what collaboration looks like. It's teamwork and it's skill building, and it's a shared ownership of the outcomes. And that's what we must continue to do, regardless of whether we're under federal monitoring and oversight, or after we've transitioned into a period where the consent decree components become part of our strategic operating plan. So in closing, I do want to just say a couple of things. We've heard a couple of times about the election. There have been some comments back and forth about the upcoming election. And so I just want to say this. Let's remain calm. Let's stay focused, and let's continue doing the work, no matter the outcome of the election. The mission does not change. Our responsibility does not change. And our commitment to this community cannot be tied to political cycles. Now, I'm a basketball fan. And so since it's March Madness, it's only fitting to borrow from one of the greatest coaches of all time, John Wooden. And he said, the true test of a person's character is what they do when no one is watching. Federal oversight will end. So what will we do when no one is watching? We are approaching a point where substantial compliance is being achieved in several areas of the consent decree. We can begin to see a future where federal oversight is no longer necessary. And that is something that we should be proud of. But if we're being honest, it also brings a level of uneasiness because it raises a fundamental question. Who will ensure that we sustain this progress? And the answer is simple. We will. I said it here often, and I say it again today. It's the people. It's always been the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Murray, you got a lot to follow here.
Yeah, the monitor was just telling me. You're a tough act to follow. Good morning, Your Honor, and thank you for the opportunity. Just a few comments. First, I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the community who took the time today to come and provide their thoughts and opinions and comments on the process and things going on around Ferguson. It's very important that they continue to do so, and that we listen to them and keep their thoughts and concerns in heart as we proceed going forward. I think they're onto something, right? That is, the core issues of the consent decree need to be realized. They need to be accomplished. And that is, the United States' primary goal is to see it successfully completed. There are some conversations going on, negotiations between the city and DOJ about streamlining, as Mr. Carey previewed, and they continue. But, as Ms. Washington elaborated, the focus is, I think, to call out the things that can be, for which the city can take the win, that we can point out either substantial compliance has been achieved and a durable remedy is in place, or that there's no longer a need to seek compliance because the actual processes or practices are no longer happening either within the police department or even within the city's jurisdiction, such as dispatch moving to the county. So those are the types of things we're looking at. I think we will come to some sort of resolution on these negotiations in the coming weeks and be able to provide something to the court in the very near future. Parallel to that, the United States would like to really encourage the city and the monitor to adopt a greater sense of urgency regarding getting compliance reviews completed so that we can show compliance as soon as possible. I think it is in all of our interests maybe to get together as the parties in the monitor and start thinking creatively about ways that we can achieve more frequent or more I don't want to think out loud, but like just get assessments that are, leading to adequate resolutions of the consent decree's requirements. I think about half of the provisions in the decree have not yet been assessed, and that is something that my leadership in Washington notices and has concerns about. And so to the extent that we can sort of address those, I think it'll help us move the ball along and move into a more regular practice in this case. And so I think as we get more assessments and some of these modifications that we are seeking to work out resolved, we will end up with a more tailored consent decree that allows everyone to focus their efforts on the core issues, the constitutional issues like use of force and stops and arrests that are appropriate, and that reasonable accountability practices are in place, such as the appropriate use of body-worn cameras and the development of early intervention systems and some technology uses that will further help the department move forward. That's it for me. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Tidwell.
It's much easier to follow Mr. Murray than it is Ms. Washington, so I'm grateful for that. Good morning, Judge. I, too, want to thank the members of the community for their attendance today and for sharing their remarks and their updates of actually what's happening in the city. It's always really helpful to hear that. The parties have detailed much of the progress made since the hearing in December, so I'm not going to rehash a lot of what Ms. Washington shared. I will, however, give a brief summary of the monitoring team's activity this quarter. A few weeks after the December hearing, the parties approved and the monitoring team filed a status report with compliance assessments for the consent decree sections that weren't part of the August 2025 semi-annual report, specifically sections 13 through 21, which includes supervision, recruitment, accountability, and civilian oversight. The report also included the findings of the monitoring team's accountability audit. And as has been our practice, the monitoring team facilitated a virtual town hall event with community members where we summarized the report and answered questions. We thank the community, members of the community who made time to attend, and want to send a special thanks to the CRB members who attended, as the accountability and CRB civilian oversight audit was part of the last report, so it was helpful to have them here and to get their real-time reactions. As the accountability audit report explains in further detail, one area in which there was insufficient data for the monitoring team to make a compliance finding was in disciplinary outcomes. In short, based on the completed investigations we reviewed, for those that had sustained findings, we were unable to determine what discipline, in some instances, what discipline was imposed, if any, and whether the CRB made any recommendations as to a different discipline, and if so, whether that recommendation was accepted by FPD. So in the coming weeks, we will issue a document request for additional information to both the police department and the CRB, as we understand that Ms. Grady from the CRB tracks this information separately. We also anticipate scheduling a meeting with Chief Doyle and Lieutenant Rice to get a better understanding of the disciplinary process, and that will hopefully button up the accountability section. There are obviously, as the report details, some sections that are either not in compliance or in partial compliance, and we will work with the parties, with FPD, to hopefully get those to substantial compliance in the near future. Compliance assessments and audits are also progressing in other areas. The audit of FPD's compliance with consent decree sections 7, 8, and 9, which is stop searches and arrests, First Amendment protected activity, and use of force, is ongoing. Last month, FPD provided an initial tranche of incident data to the monitoring team, specifically Dan Gomez and Roger Nunez, who have been working with Captain Dilworth to supplement the data and fill some gaps. Although we hope to confine the review to the 100 randomly selected incidents from the auditing period, the incidents that we selected do not offer sufficient data from which the monitoring team can properly assess compliance. So we'll conduct more targeted searches. We may have to identify specific offenses, drug offenses, or other arrests so that we can get, a reasonable population of materials to make an assessment from. So Dan and Roger will continue to work with Captain Dilworth on that, and we'll report back with any progress or other issues that we encounter. As with this and other audits, we endeavor to conduct meaningful and fair assessments and to offer recommendations and observations that will improve systems, not just check boxes, but to improve systems. These take time, especially given the small composition of the monitoring team, which is purposeful based on FPD's size and its budgetary constraints. The monitoring team's conservative staffing model also hopefully counters what Mr. Carey described as the asymmetry and disorder that results when you have multiple people, multiple voices, overtaxing Captain Dilworth and others with competing work streams. We can certainly explore ramping up, but only if doing so makes sense given the staffing challenges that Ms. Washington described. The remaining audit is in the community policing and community engagement section 3 of the consent decree. In December, as the court may recall, Dr. Lee Anderson, the monitoring team's subject matter expert in that area, was here in Ferguson to complete the in-person portions of that ongoing audit. She has completed her work, and I am working with her to finalize a report for circulation to the parties. The audit extended beyond assessing outputs to achieving a range of tangible and intangible outcomes. These included ensuring operational alignment with community policing principles and confirming that internal policies and practices were aligned and appropriately communicated externally. The audit sought to verify FPD's compliance with the problem-solving model and ensure that policing plans that FPD has drafted were rooted in community needs and collaborative approaches. Although the report is not complete, I can tell the court that the results were overwhelmingly positive. Dr. Anderson found the police department demonstrated substantial and measurable progress in building community trust, transparency, fairness, and collaboration consistent with the requirements of the consent decree. Based on Dr. Anderson's interviews with officers, supervisors, command staff, civilian partners, youth program leaders, and others, along with comprehensive review of policies, training curricula, and operational practices, she found that the community engagement and community policing principles are being fully integrated into the department's daily operations. The findings reflected a clear department-wide culture shift. Community policing is no longer treated as a standalone initiative or a reactive strategy implemented during a time of crisis. Instead, it has become a part of FPD's core organizational identity, due in no small part to the work that Ms. Washington detailed, her work and the work of others within the department. Leadership at all levels reinforced and modeled this approach. Chief Doyle consistently framed the consent decree as a tool for growth rather than punishment, while community policing was fully integrated into the department's mission, strategic direction, and leadership messaging. Command staff and supervisors were held accountable for reinforcing these engagement expectations, and leaders modeled these principles through attendance at community meetings, direct meetings with residents, and active leadership and problem-solving initiatives. Captain Dilworth's leadership was repeatedly cited as exemplary, reflecting hands-on mentoring, SARA-based problem-solving, and a consistent reinforcement of procedural justice. The report will also identify a few remaining priorities and growth opportunities, including expansion of public transparency and reporting, but we're hopeful that with a few refinements, FPD will be well positioned to serve as a model for post-consent decree community policing. Lastly, before I conclude, and begging the court's indulgence for a personal note of appreciation, first to outgoing City Manager John Hampton for his leadership, especially at a critical juncture where a steady hand was needed. He made some crucial hiring decisions that have led to this period of sustained momentum. Mr. Musgrave has big shoes to fill, and on behalf of the monitoring team, we welcome him and look forward to working with him. And now Mayor Ella Jones. Last July, when I was here, following the departure of many of the original DOJ team, I summarized and listed those individuals like you and Mr. Carey who had been a part of this matter from the beginning, and included Captain Dilworth and Mayor Jones as the kids would say, OGs. I want to thank Mayor Jones for her commitment to this process and her support for the monitoring team, whether in gathering information for community surveys or providing the kind of historical perspective and institutional knowledge that is critical to our work, and for just being present, hearing after hearing, town hall after town hall. It is unlikely that I would have been here on day one without her intervention, and I'm not entirely sure that I would still be here in year 10 without her leadership. So thank you, Mayor Jones.
And just so you know, she did step out, but I'm counting on these people to tell them all those things you're saying.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that she's not here to hear it.
Embarrassed, yeah.
So I'll stop there unless the court has questions.
No, I don't have questions. I do thank you, and I think that doing the audits and the compliance work that needs to be done is very important, as Mr. Murray and Ms. Tidwell have noted, but it is expensive and time consuming, and one of the things I think I've appreciated is that they are figuring out ways to do it to not be as time consuming or as expensive. So I think that's a good way to do it. And I think Ms. Washington once again expressed very well for all of us the goal here. I think everybody sort of said the same thing. I don't know if it's right. I'm not good with sports analogies of any sort. So I was going to say home stretch, but I'm not sure what that really means in horse racing. So I don't want to say home stretch, but we are making a lot of progress right now. And I want it to continue, and I'm sure it will. I appreciate very much the commitment of the city and the city officials, and I know that there's a lot of momentum to continue, and there are, every city, every municipality has differences. When I read about the Ferguson meeting about the data center, that's like every day there's a community having a big meeting about data centers. I mean, it's a new thing. So, where people are going to disagree about what they think is right, and that's what we do in a democracy. And then we figure out a good path forward. I have been talking to the parties about the streamlining of the consent decree to try to sort of, lawyers and I have had a couple of sessions to just talk about, what legally they thought they were headed to and what's happening. And I'm very impressed with the responsiveness of everyone and the way everyone is working hard to, it's to streamline and to, there are some things that have happened that have been really good. And I think we can recognize some of those things. And if there's something in there that, rather than say, this provision about, the school resource officers, well, that hasn't been implemented. Well, yeah, there's a reason for that. That's always been the way it was. And the dispatch and the jail, those are things that were mentioned, and they are the easy examples. So I don't want anybody to panic or be concerned about that. We are in this process. We are not, nobody's just saying, we're going to just say it's done and go away. That's not going to happen as long as I'm the judge in charge of it. So just so you know that. But it's also really good to see how hard everyone is working to make sure that we are conserving resources and doing it so that, so that it can be sustained. The most important thing, as several people mentioned, is that once there's not federal oversight on this sometime in the future, when that happens, that these reforms continue. And I have a lot of faith that they will, because of the hard work that you all have put into it so far, and want to make sure that we do continue them. And so we've got a ways to go. It's probably not final stretch is probably wrong if I'm thinking about how horse racing may work, if I understand it, which I don't understand even basketball, just so you know. But we're getting there. So thank you all very much. We will have another meeting. We will hear from you again. We will. I'll talk to the lawyers, and we'll schedule the next hearing and get an order out on it. And I just want to thank everyone. I really appreciate the big turnout here today. I appreciate the continued interest and involvement of all the people, whether you're speaking or not. You're here. I see people here, and we really want you to be here, and we appreciate it. And of course, to all the people at the city who are working so hard to achieve this, thank you very much. So that's it. Court is in recess.